Welcome to the She Ventures podcast, dedicated to inspiring women to unleash their untapped potential across work, life, and beyond. We bring you stories and inspiration from around the world, across fields and industries, and ones that nourish the mind, body, and soul. Hosted by Georgina Miranda, founder and CEO of She Ventures. We are thrilled to welcome Sonali Fiske, a Sri Lankan American woman-identified leadership consultant to Black Indigenous women of color. She is also the founder of Revolutionaries Take the Mic, a movement to amplify, center, and advocate for more BIPOC, futurist, visionaries, and leaders to help disrupt the disparities in race, leadership, power, and wealth. Sonali is also the host of Revolutionary Voices, a talk show on Ruckus Avenue Radio with a current monthly listenership of 9 million plus. Through her shows, she centers voices of color in activist spaces on addressing social justice, cultural, and political issues of our time. Sonali is also the executive producer and curator of TEDx Delthorn Women. We'll be sharing all the links on how you can connect with her post-show. Thanks so much for joining. Really happy to be having this conversation with you and learn more about your work and be a voice of inspiration for those listening that also identify from underrepresented communities that are doing work and doing their own efforts to amplify their own voices and the voices of others in spaces that we don't always get to do that.
Right. Oh, it's so good to be here on your show. Thank you for having me, Georgina.
Yes. So, gosh, there's so much to dive into. Tell us, I read a lot of things about what you're doing, but maybe just take us through your journey, right? What was that? I kind of feel like sometimes when we have a big why, it's like this burning thing inside of us that has to pour out of us. And we almost don't get a choice, because I think in this work, it's not easy work. And it's not always the most profitable work either, right? There's a lot of things I think that need to be done just because they need to be done, and there's not necessarily a monetization directly connected to it. And so it's a path that you really have to be determined and committed to.
Right.
And so, maybe just take us through some of your journey.
Oh, boy, that's so true. You don't get into the social justice space as a money-making venture, That was not the motivator, the prime motivator. It was just seeing Georgina, a certain kind. This work started from a place of rage. It's really sometimes hard to talk about that, because we don't embrace these emotions, especially anger, rage. My rage is sacred to me, because this work started from seeing a certain type of woman constantly being celebrated and centered and getting all of the media and speaking gigs. And I'm talking about the white, able-bodied, heteronormative, cute woman. And so many Black women were being passed over. So many brown women were being passed over. Where are the Indigenous voices in our spaces, right? Especially in climate philanthropy and funding, are mostly white-led organizations. And that's just one industry, one issue I'm talking about. But I knew, there's that old adage, Georgina, that if you find a problem and you're wondering why there isn't a solution, then it's kind of up to you to figure it out, So I had to step in and find out if there was something I could do about this. What can I do to help disrupt these disparities in the lack of racial equity in leadership, right? The lack of racial parity in leadership. So that's what I did. I started Revolutionaries Take the Mic as a way to, and I built a curriculum right? And I built a whole structure around it so I can, and then I got all the support that I needed so I can step in to support the Black and brown women who had so much to say, so many ways to inform the culture, but didn't always have the resources and the structure and support around doing so. So that's what got me started with Revolutionaries Take the Mic.
Yeah. Oh, I want to learn more about that. I want to focus on this word of rage, though, because I think it's a powerful word, and I think it's something that can be misconstrued as something always negative.
Right.
If I think of my activism work, yeah, it was that word that triggered something in me that didn't leave me an option to do something about it. In my case, it was around gender-based violence and climate. And I think we have always choices what we can do with these emotions that come to us, right? And if you feel rage, I think it can be targeted or redirected into a positive way.
And I find what I'm finding is that those of us that identify as women, we do this well. I know that's a generalization, but we tend to take our deeply seated emotions to figure out a way to turn it around and make it in service to others. And I knew there was so much emotion we're holding in our bodies, whether that's sacred rage or deep sorrow, right? Frustration. And we have this intrinsic need to want to know what to do with that, how to do better. And so that's why this platform exists, Revolutionaries Take the Mic, to come in, find out how to take what causes you the greatest fear or the greatest upset, the greatest sorrow, the greatest anger, and speak to that, right? How to build a cohesive message around that and take the platform of your choice with it. Because we're not, always going to find the solutions we need in others. We have to step into our own truth. A lot of what causes us so much deep emotional anger, Georgina, what I'm finding in working with the Black and brown women that I am, is that comes from some personal story that we're connected to, whether that's historically or what's going on in our current lives or a lived experience that we've had. So my job is to help women identified folks find that commonality, find that intersection, right? What is it about this issue that causes you so much emotion around it? And how to bring a cohesive message into the world with it, right?
I was just going to say, I think it's so important to have an outlet then for these emotions and these. I almost picture like one of those megaphones, like the amplification, right? Of like a way to give like birth to what's brewing inside in a way.
Yeah.
And so that's so beautiful with what you've created. And so for those listening, maybe you're a little confused, like, what is this platform? What did she create? So take us through, because it's an actual program, right? You work with women for how long? How long is the engagement?
Yes, Revolutionaries Take the Mic is a 6-month program. This is the 11th cohort that I'm starting in the fall now, in October of 2013. 11th cohort. Amazing. So we've had graduated over 100 women. And when I use the term women, Georgina, I'm talking about it's an inclusive space. So it's also trans women, non-binary folks that I work with. The course is for those who, identify as women and who don't mind learning in a femme-centered space. But I created that incubator because I wanted us to drop into a safe space. A lot of us, BIPOC folks, there's a lot of racialized harm and a lot of racialized stories that need to be looked at in service of our messaging. And we're not always able to unpack that, right, in mixed spaces. So I wanted to create an incubator, a safe communal space where BIPOC folks can come in and look at that and interrogate that and see what part of that might be in service of the message and what part might need to be left out. So it's a lot about giving people the spaciousness they need in community to figure that out. So I'm really passionate about that.
Amazing. And take us through some of, I imagine there must be big breakthroughs and transformations for folks after going through this, or opportunities even, right? Because the minute you give yourself permission to unleash your voice, to actually put it out there in the world, then that also creates space for opportunities to come and for, you to be in a position of influence as well. So is there anything that jumps out at you that you can think of? I'm kind of putting you on the spot as to a powerful story that's resonated from one of your participants.
Well, space taking is a lot, okay? In this day and age when, overexposure and being so public about our causes and issues seems to be, misconstrued and taken out of context. Taking up space is a lot, right? How do you grow your persona, your personhood, your public persona in a responsible way, in an incremental way, and in a healthy way? So that's a huge part of what I teach too, Georgina, right? How to do it with the support around it. It's not easy work, but I'm so deeply proud of some of the women, like one of my clients just opened her own gallery.
Amazing.
Just here. Yeah, she spent a year working with Aboriginal women in Australia, and then she moved back to Sri Lanka and really just wanted to connect better with the land. She just opened her art gallery to help those of us with multiple identities navigate those two spaces or multiple spaces. It's beautiful. A lot of the folks I work with are in, justice-centered work, doing justice-centered work, right? Whether that's, around immigration or the climate or gender. It's a lot of them are mission-driven. So these mission-driven are artists and entrepreneurs and leaders. It's very personal. It's very deeply rooted in their, not just their racial identity, but their whole social identity. So it's not something theoretical, right? Or something scientific or somebody else's case study. It's their own life. So I wanted to create a space where they can go out and feel supported and held while they're being this vocal, while they're being this seen. So some of the women I've worked with have gone on to give their TED Talks, right? Start their own talk shows, start their own book tours. Gosh, I could go on and on. Start their own galleries,
Yeah.
I'm deeply humbled when I think about just how many women have gone on to just live their dream. A lot of them have gone on to just take that next valid step. Sometimes, Georgina, when we talk about these big issues like social justice or female leadership, it's so vast and it seems so manageable because we're holding a big vision, right?
Right.
So it's the whole staircase we're looking down. And all we need to do is look at that one step. So those of us who are visionaries like you, it's difficult sometimes to know what that one first step is because you're looking down at that whole staircase. So my position is that I'm that first step for you. Step in, take this one step, and then let's work the staircase together.
I do think that sometimes too, I've caught myself this like, ooh, is that too big? And this aspect of, you can call it imposter syndrome, you can call it a lot of things, right? But this, depending on where you are, where your platform size is personally, right? Like obviously there's people that have more of a PR presence and things like that. maybe have a different perspective. But, you know, if you are just starting off on this journey and you want to have a big impact and you want to be a change maker in this world, it can be daunting to even accept that that is your calling, that that is your path, you know, and to take that first step, which can be something towards the project, or it could be something like working with somebody like you and being part of a supportive community to hold space and honor the vision with you.
Yes. You know, I also want to say, Georgina, you know, you talked about rage before. You know, for us women, I also want to add to what you said that our rage is sacred. You know, I want us to listen deeper to what wants to be revealed to us and through this sacred rage. To listen, truly listen deeper to the ancestral voice, right? I recognize that if my ancestors, my spirit ancestors and living ancestors, had the extent of choice and the access that I do, like, my God, what could they have said and done? Right? We're in this era of limitless choices at our disposal to literally start a YouTube channel or start a podcast or give a talk whenever and however we want. And that comes with great responsibility, right? So I really wanted to also have, be a point of contact for those that want to utilize their rage in ways to help move their movement forward, right? To take their deep emotion and how to cultivate that in service of the greatest good. But I think sacred rage is also listening to our bodies, because there are a lot of us, like, it breaks my heart. There are a lot of us that store this rage in our bodies. I'm one of them. You know, I stored it in my body for a long time. But it's also wisdom in our bodies too. And they're like small ticking time bombs. So if we don't really listen to it, it's going to be illness and incubation in our bodies. So,
Totally. I'm so glad you're talking about that, because I think that just in general, I'm fascinated, even with myself, right? I do a lot of sports, I climb, I feel like I'm in tune with my body in a lot of ways. And then I also acknowledge that it took, you know, in the last 10 years, a different relationship with my body to really be in relationship with my body, outside of just your training and you're doing things for a physical objective, right? And I'm constantly amazed by the mystery that is our bodies as women, and how many women don't really have this true connection with our bodies, with our cycles, with our everything, you know, that I think is what makes, I don't know, I think it's one of the so many reasons why being a woman is fascinating and beautiful. And the ties back to this word of sacredness that you shared. And yeah, and the rage, and I'm just, my mind's immediately going to like gender-based violence, which I focus on a lot, right? And how, you know, why do women's bodies get misused, violated, abused? And that's also because people know that can destroy communities. Like, our bodies are sacred. Like, they give life. They, you know, that we do so many amazing things with our sacred bodies, and so they're also the key target sometimes, you know, in the most vulnerable, terrible circumstances.
Yes. Yes. And with that, I also want to cultivate deeper listening in us. Because if we're doing all of the talking and speaking up and speaking out, well, who's doing the listening? You know, I think it has to go hand in hand. Our better speaking up has to go with our better listening, right? There's this. I come from a Buddhist background. I'm not a practicing Buddhist, but there is this word in Buddhism called prajna, which is to examine our natural responses to uncomfortable conversations. right? It's like asking questions like slowing down the process and asking questions like, how am I feeling right now, before I react and respond to that. How am I offended? Am I bruised? This is another thing we unpack and navigate in Revolutionaries Take the Mic, Georgina, because we do a lot of justice seeking in our online spaces, on our social media. And there isn't a whole lot of spaciousness to explore this part, to navigate the listening. We're all speaking on top of each other. It's kind of chaos. It's messy online. Okay. It's also downright toxic, if I may say. So if we are going, if we are going to be stepping in as better leaders, which is calling things out, calling things in, raising our awareness, raising our voice, it has to accompany better listening. First and foremost to our own bodies, like, how am I feeling right now after hearing that or saying that thing? Am I feeling ignited? Am I feeling kind of bruised? Am I sensing the rage coming up? Like, will my actions create room for others, or is it going to shut them down? Right? Also, what are my motivations for speaking up right now? Or what are my motivations for withholding? I believe as leaders, we have to be careful with that. We have to carefully consider how content might be received, or how we must make these on the spot adjustments when necessary. Right? We're on the spot, most of us, when a reporter shoves a microphone in our face, right? Or a journalist needs a soundbite. It's very, online, it's very, very knee jerk. So we have to come up with a narrative, a story, a message that we want to, that identifies our work and who we are as a leader, right? And that will enable you to step into these roles, these um, spontaneous situations. You'll feel, confident about stepping into those kinds of situations if you have a certain narrative or a message that you have outlined and put together. So that's part of the work too, right?
Amazing. Well, we'll definitely be sharing in our links, and I want to share a little bit more about how people can enroll and when it's all happening and all that. I do want to just talk a little bit too about your TEDx event and the coaching that you do there as well, right? So, because that's yet another way that you amplify underrepresented voices, and it's incredible work. You and I've worked together, so share us a little bit more about that with us.
Thank you for asking. Yes, I have. I'm the executive producer of TEDx Delthorn Women, which is a TEDx event in the LA area, in the South Bay to be exact. And this will be our my third production of TEDx Delthorn Women. And I'm so proud of it, Georgina, because the last two, we hold the distinction of having produced the most racially and culturally diverse TEDx event in the West. And we're held to this level of diversity within the TED brand. And I'm really proud of that because, again, this goes back to the work that I do, Georgina. I really wanted to prove that we can put together an event that was representative of our society, right? Mm-hmm. That was reflective of our humanity. I was tired of seeing these all white panels and events, and I knew it was a disservice to those of us who, come from so many beautiful different backgrounds and cultures and ethnicities and persuasions and genders. And they would just not be represented correctly, So I wanted to step in and say, okay, come on, we can do this. And we did. And so this year we're going to produce TEDx Delthorn Women again on Saturday, December 2nd. Our event theme is the right to dream. The right to dream. The reason why I conjured up that theme is because I want us to have more spaciousness to dream bigger dreams, right? This hegemonic system constantly requires us to defend our humanity, constantly keeps us in hypervigilance, where we're sword fighting white supremacist ideals, right? And oppression, that it doesn't create enough space in our inner ecology and in our world to dream the world that we want to make, the world we want to be a part of, to dream up new ways of thinking and being. So I really want us to step in to create, to sit with our curiosity. I want us to become comrades of curiosity. You know, how can we uh, be more creative in our justice seeking? Uh, and so that's what this year's theme is about, and I cannot wait to see how this comes to light. But yeah, that's part of the work. I bring more Black and Brown folks onto the TEDx stage. I work with all racial identities, to be honest. So yeah, I'd love to know, you know, if this is something that has always spoken to you, like if you've had an inner, you know, inkling, or it's always been on your vision board that you want to give a TED talk, it is totally 100% doable and possible for you. A lot of times people feel it's out of reach, that it's way out there, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's doable. There's over 7,000 TEDx events happening around the globe.
Right.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
And
yeah.
you know, if you have a message that you know can disrupt the status quo, that can really help inform and educate the culture, or be a counter narrative to the culture, you need to get out there and share it. Because Georgina, I cannot even tell you, oh my God, the amount of people and communities that I've reached just from that one TEDx talk I gave back in December 2018. Ooh, I'm hearing from people. I've heard from people from New Zealand to Ghana to India to Venezuela. It's ridiculous how far reaching that TED Talk got. And I just learned that my TED Talk is now part of the Women's Gender Studies program at UCLA.
Amazing.
It's part of the curriculum. And I'm like, what? And I share that not to brag, but to illustrate how far your words can carry, how far your message can go. And who would have known? I would have never dreamt that up, right?
Yeah.
So give that talk. If that's on your heart, you need to do it.
I'm just going to share that, you know, and the world is ready for new messages. You know, if we think of the messaging and the point of view and voice that we've heard most of our existence, like it is time for new messages to be shared and amplified.
Please get out there.
Yes. And so, you know, the amazing thing is that people can actually work with, I mean, obviously they can apply to your TED Talk event, but people can actually work with you as a TEDx coach. So if it's somebody that would like to do one, but they're not really sure how to go about it, what the process is, how to write the talk, practice it, all of that, you also provide that coaching as well, correct? And that's part of one of your offerings.
Miranda, around this is that there's a lot of fear around backlash, around saying the wrong thing, but not, you know, saying the right thing, around, well, what if I say is going to be, might be outdated or oppressive or you know, tired and part of the old paradigm. I'm like, that's what I do. I help you get your message current, right? Reflective of your story, how to weave in your story, right? How to tell your story in an effective way, what to leave out, what to include, because you don't want to tell them your whole life story in your TED Talk.
And there's no time for that anyways. And for TEDx events, it's meant to be an idea worth spreading. It's not necessarily your personal life story. They actually don't encourage you to tell your personal life story.
That's right.
So there actually has to be a message, an idea worth sharing and spreading.
Correct. TED is all about remaining idea focused. Right? Do you have an idea that can help, you know, disrupt the status quo and take us to a new place, to a new world, to a new way of thinking and being? So yes, if you want to give a TED Talk, stay idea focused. Keep that at your center.
Amazing. So it's been, I mean, I feel like we could talk for hours, and I'm going to definitely have to have you back and dive in a little deeper on so many of these topics. But I sincerely hope for anyone listening or watching, if you're watching the video and you have a message to share in any capacity, that this has inspired you to take that first step, to take action, and to also be really like, just sit with your message, right? What is that message? That who could it help? And
don't sit long on it,
Yeah, and don't sit too long. And you have a resource here to help you if so you need. So how can people connect with you? And I'll be sure to include all the links and everything on the blog post that will accompany the podcast.
Thank you for asking that. Yes, you can go to sonalifiske.com. That's my website, sonalifiske.com. And you can apply for Revolutionaries Take the Mic. If you identify as BIPOC, you identify as a Black Indigenous person of color, apply. Because we're going huge. There's media training in there. So much to get you out there, right? I mean, I can't believe 2024 is 5 months away. It's ridiculous. Like what? And so just get this. I want you to end 2023 on a big note. So apply for Revolutionary Shake the Mic.
When does it start?
That starts in the first week in October. So just less than 2 months.
Okay.
So we're enrolling right now. So get in at sonalifiske.com. And then if you want to give a TED Talk, same. Reach out to me on sonalifiske.com. I'll also share my Calendly link with you, if I can, right. Georgina. And folks can reach out to me that way too. Happy to speak to you and give you kind of a roadmap, right? Even if we don't end up working together, please just get the support that you need. Don't try to figure out your idea alone in a dark room, in a vacuum. That's not how this works. That's not how our ideas and our books get written. We have to get out there and get the support that we need. So just, do the work and getting the support that you need. And that's what's going to get you to that next level.
Amazing. I love what you said. That's not going to happen alone in a vacuum. I think that that's the power of collective, and it's the power of community. And it gives us courage. I always say that when we do something courageous, it also gives other people permission to do something equally as courageous. And then when you're in community and taking those courageous steps together, it's so powerful to just have that energy of surrounding you and not having to do it alone. And getting that feedback too, right, of how your message is resonating with different folks, because that can help you fine tune it. If sometimes as visionaries, we think we have it so beautifully in our head, right. And then we get it out, and then other people don't quite see it the way we do. We're like, interesting. Okay, but why did
it's like, okay, that's not quite how it sounded in my own head, and get the support, and that's how you stay courageous. That's how you stay accountable. That's how you stay on track. Is get some coaching and some support around it. Do it in community with another colleague or friend. Do not try to figure this out all on your own. We just don't need to. That lone wolf mentality is just so 2000,
And I always love to just, close with the parting message for women from our guests. So is there anything you would want to share with any of our amazing listeners and viewers that are taking this all in?
Wow. Gosh, there's so many things I could say about that. I will say something I shared this morning with a dear client, who was feeling deeply conflicted around whether she needs to speak up or speak out about this one particular issue. Georgina, there isn't a lack of issues to care about in this world. There are so many things we as womankind care about and need to speak up and speak out about. But there's no way that we can, be everywhere at all times. And so what she said, what do I do, Sonali? I really want to. And I told her something that's vitally important before we dive in with our 2 cents or before we share our hot take on a particular issue. Um, you know, who's missing from this conversation? That's one thing to think about. But I also, this is really strange, but I learned this from a comedian called Craig Ferguson. Gosh, you never know where your teachers are going to come from. But he's a British comedian, and he shared something that has served me well. It has changed my life. He said something that I've never forgotten. 3 things that we must ask ourselves before we share anything online, or whether we want to give our hot take on a particular issue. Is before sharing anything, ask yourself, does this need to be said? Does it need to be said by me? And does this need to be said by me now? And I think these are ways that I can truly activate my sacred listening and how to best regulate my system and measure the barometer around my sacred rage. Before I choose to chime in with my my version of the truth. So that has helped serve me so well and serve my clients so well. And I hope it serves somebody out there as well.
Amazing. Oh, thank you for sharing that with all of us. Thank you for taking the time to join us, for all the amazing work that you do and continue to serve and show up for others. And I look forward to more conversations in the future. And if anyone, again, wants to connect, we're going to put all the links there for people to find you and follow your amazing work. And just also, if you're listening, I just have to say, and you are have a place of privilege and access and a platform to consider sharing that space with others that don't always get that chance. And that's important, because it doesn't all have to happen siloed, and people from marginalized communities don't need to be the only ones doing that for one another.
Right.
That there is this beautiful opportunity for those with power and privilege to open the space for others to partake and to have access. So thank you so much.
Thank you for this platform, for your work, and for stepping in, doing the work that you do. I appreciate you and this time together with you.
Thank you.